Hello and welcome to the studio. Today I'm going to sew up one of my patterns from the Painters collection, and I thought I'd bring you along with me. So you can get the pattern from my website, which I'll put down below. Go and grab some fabric from your fabric stash and get out your sewing machine and you can make one with me. So this is the Painter's tote. It's a tote bag with 8 pockets that we sew into the front. It's got straps that you can make as part of the pattern, or you can use webbing, and it's absolutely huge inside, so you can fit lots of your creative tools, fabric if you're fabric shopping, or anything else. We don't care what you put inside your bag. And this is the first pattern that I released as part of the Painters collection, and it's an absolute beginner. Now, I've been teaching maker bag workshops here in the studio, and we've had people that haven't even touched a sewing machine finish these in 4 hours, and they look amazing. And you can have lots of fun with kind of patterns of fabric, different fabric choices, because we layer all the pieces in the construction. So as you can see, I've got some blue and beige canvas here, but you could go absolutely wild. Now, for fabric, you are going to want to go with something quite sturdy, nothing too lightweight for the outside. So canvas, denim, great choices. If you are going to use something a little bit lighter, it's probably best that you interface it just to give it a bit of structure. But for the lining, you can just use something like a cotton or a linen, and that's absolutely fine as well. And for the pattern pieces, you're going to need your straps, so 2 of these. I'm going to use webbing today, but there is a pattern piece for the strap if you want to make that out of fabric as well. You are going to need to cut out 2 of the smaller pocket that goes on the outside of the bag. You're going to cut 2 of the outer bag piece as well, which also makes some of the other pockets. And again, 2 of these out of your fabric. This is where you could probably go with something contrast. And then you're going to need 2 of the bag body, the larger piece. And this will be 2 in your kind of fabric of choice, but then you're also going to cut 2 of this in the lining. The first thing we're going to do with our pattern pieces is take our smaller pockets, and we're going to take the top edge and we're going to first fold it over once by 1 centimetre, and we're going to press that all the way along. And then to conceal that raw edge, we just want to press it over again by 1 centimetre. And we can pin this in place and then top stitch across this top edge and do the same for our smaller pocket piece. And then we'll do the same again for our outer body piece, but just along this top edge here, the one opposite the cutout corners at the bottom. And that's all we need to do for hemming. So hemming the top pieces of the smaller pockets and the top pieces of the outer body as well. So once we've prepped those hems of the smaller pockets and then the larger outer pockets as well, we're going to stack them on top of each other using the markings in the pattern, so it should line up with these corners of the bag body as well, and we should get this smaller pocket in the center of all of those pieces. So it's the bag body first, then the outer piece, and then the smaller pocket. And then we're going to use the strap or the webbing. Then we're going to use the strap or the webbing to attach everything together, and we'll do this for one side and the other side. And all you want to do is lay the strap or the webbing over the top of the smaller pocket, so the pocket's kind of in the center, so we can trap it inside that webbing and strap. And you will pin the strap to the pieces, fold it over at the edge, making sure that your top is not twisted, and then the other side of the strap on the other side as well. And you're going to want to mark about 7 to 8 centimeters from this outer pocket piece as well, just to make sure everything's attached together. And then we stitch up one side of the strap or the webbing, and then pivot across, and then down all the way to the bottom. And we do that for both sides, and then your pockets are starting to be formed and all attached in. So we're going to pin our strap out of the way because we don't want it getting caught up in anything when we're attaching the lining. And you're going to place your lining piece, which will be the same as your bag body, so the corners will match up on either side. And all we want to do is pin it along this top edge, and we're going to sew this with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. And a really useful step is we can top stitch this top edge of our bag, but we can also understitch it, which means stitching this seam allowance to the lining to give it a really crisp fold. And then we can either top stitch for decoration, or we can press it and leave it as is. So all you want to do is make sure that your seam allowance is always facing to the lining. And we're going to sew along this, slightly pulling the pieces apart so that we're stitching that seam allowance to this lining piece. So when this is pressed, you get a really clean edge. And we're going to repeat this for the other side. Once we've made 2 of our bag pieces, so our bag body with the strap and the pockets attached to the lining piece, we're going to take the other piece and place it right sides together, and we're going to pin our clip all the way around, making sure that we're lining everything up super neatly, including the straps at the bottom. And we're going to stitch across the bottom all the way down the 2 sides, skipping these corners, leaving these unsewn. And then we're going to sew up the edge of the lining, but we're going to leave a gap because we're going to need to turn the whole bag out of this later on. So we're just going to stitch maybe 5 centimeters in, and again leaving the lining corners unsewn. So I'm going to start by sewing up the bottom of the bag. There is quite a lot of bulk here with the straps and all of the pocket pieces, so you're going to want to take it easy and make sure you've got a new needle in so it's nice and sharp. So we're going to sew this by 1 centimeter. Once we've sewn this bottom piece, we're going to sew down the long edge, including the lining, so just a 1 centimeter stitch all the way down to the bottom of that corner, and we're going to repeat that for the other side. So once you've sewn along the bottom and the 2 side pieces, now it's time to sew along the lining top, and we're just going to sew in maybe 4 to 5 centimeters in, so we have a nice big gap to turn the bag out right sides, and just make sure that we're leaving all of these corners open. So once your painter's tote looks a little bit like this, and you've got all of the long edges sewn, the bottom sewn up, and you have your little gap in the lining, now it's time for the corners. And those that have been on my workshop know this is my favourite bit. So these are box corners, and I just think it's magic how they create kind of that 3D structure. And what you want to do with these corner pieces is make sure that you're pinching at the right angle of the corresponding layers. So all of the pocket pieces for this side, all of the pocket pieces for this side, and you're going to open up that hole and meet up your seams. And because we're going to have bulk here, you can fold your seam allowances opposite ways just to balance out that bulk. And we're going to pull really tight into these corners so that we create this straight edge. And then we're going to sew along this straight edge by 1 centimeter. And we need to do this for all of the corners, including the lining. So once you've got your box corners all pinned together, and before you start sewing, just make sure that where you've got your seam allowances, and we've spreaded them out at this point here, just make sure that when we go to the next corner, that the seam allowances are going the same way. So this one is folded this way, and it's folded this way at the corner as well. And that just means we don't get any twisting in our seam allowances. But this is all pinned up and ready to sew. And again, there's going to be quite a lot of bulk here. So we're going to want to make sure that we're going fairly slow on the machine. And once this corner is all sewn up, we're going to do the same for the others. Now, this is where the magic happens. So our bag is completely sewn up and will look a lot like this. Obviously, we've got these raw edges, but it doesn't matter because we've got the lining. And now what we want to do is put our hands inside that hole that we left in the lining and pull our bag through that hole. Hopefully you've left yours big enough to be able to fit the bag through. If not, you might just want to unpick a little bit. And we're going to push all of that through. And when we get to these corners, just make sure that you're pushing out your corners to give that 3D shape. Oop, I've left a pin in there. So we're going to press out all of these corners. And then because we did the understitching, you can push all of your lining in. And we'll give all of this a press in a second. But now you can see that your tote has come together, and it's as simple as that. So a little bit of prep, then all of that stitching, doing those box corners, and then we pull it all through and your bag is pretty much done. So all I'm going to do now is take our lining hole that we left, and I'm going to press in the seam allowances and just top stitch across here. If you want to go by hand and whip stitch it or with an invisible stitch, you can do that, but I don't mind. This is on the inside of the bag. And then for this one, I'm going to give the edges a really good press, and I'm not going to top stitch these, so that's why I understitched them. And then I'll show you the final bag. So this is the final painter's bag that I've made today. And yeah, it's, like I say, suitable for beginners. It's a couple of hours sew, and you can have so much fun with using different fabrics. So obviously I've been quite neutral using this canvas with the pop of red in the webbing. But let me know in the comments what fabric you would use, maybe different colours, or if you've got any printed fabric in your stash. Let me know how you would kind of construct this together, because I'd be excited to see. But yeah, I've now got myself another painter's tote, and I probably need to go shopping and fill this up. So I will see you next time.